We are at the Forbidden Worlds Festival 2025, and we're going to talk about 1977's Orca. I'm Mike from Genuine Chit-Chat. This is Dan from Spider Dan The Secret Bores, and again, we are tackling Orca. So yes, this is a film which I had never seen before. So it is part really encapsulating the Jawsploitation sort of genre, because this is Forbidden Worlds of the Deep. That's the theme of this year. And, myself and Dan are both on the press team, and also we are trying to watch as much of the content they're releasing as possible, doing lots of reviews. So if you're listening to this, there's already reviews out for loads of the other stuff we're doing, and we are alternating it between our channels. But this one, so because it's the Jaws 50th anniversary, and because, Universal and etc. are doing massive things with Jaws, so the Forbidden Worlds Film Festival want to do things a little bit different. And there's a whole thing at the Forbidden Worlds Film Festival, before showing Orca, Rob from the Bad Movie Bible did this whole really great presentation about Jawsploitation and all the multiple films that have essentially tried to capitalize on the success of Jaws, because obviously Jaws was like the first summer blockbuster back in 1975, and Orca really is riding on those coattails, where it's about a killer whale, an orca, and there's a lot of stuff in here about Jaws. But this film I'd never heard of it at all. I know that, Dan, you had watched this before.
Yes, covered it on the podcast a very long time ago.
And I think a lot of people in the audience and who came to this festival, this was one of the things they were the most excited for. I was not as much of a fan. I was much more excited by the film that was the secret film, which we'll do in another pod.
Yes, we'll save that.
We'll save that. But a lot of people apparently were not as much of a fan of, and I bloody loved.
Yeah.
But Orca. So why don't you tell us, Dan, about your history of Orca?
My history of Orca. So me and T.D. Velasquez, he's also called Dan as well, he brought this to our Secret Defenders format and was like, I want to defend this. So I went, sure, yeah, what the hell? And Jawsploitation, let's go. And he kind of introduced me to the idea of Jawsploitation. But then he turned around and was like, I bamboozled you. This isn't really a defense. I think it's not so great. And I was like, well, I love it, so I'll defend it. I thought it was great. I thought it was great fun. But yeah, it has a lot of elements that would occur almost in the Jaws franchise. It almost kind of riffing on those things. And the opening, I was saying to you, is like they were looking quite literally to knock Jaws out of the water, and they show that within the narrative of the film as well. They go, what could do that to a killer shark? A great white, a killer whale.
Yeah, like a great white shark goes to attack someone,
yes,
and a killer whale takes it out.
Yeah, exactly. Like literally, like it's a bullet or a missile.
I was gonna say it was punches it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like a Superman punch of a shark out of the water, and then and then you're in kind of the Richard Harris character, Dumbledore himself, versus a killer whale. I don't know how else to sell it on to people than that. He plays this kind of happy-go-lucky Irish sailor. They're just off Newfoundland, I think, I believe, of Canada, where they're hunting, and he has a crew, and he sees this and he goes, I can make loads of money. Let's go. Let's try and catch one. And he
wants to catch it and give it to an aquarium.
Yes.
First of all, that's the idea.
Yeah, I don't know if I entirely believe him when he says that, but yeah, he's talking to a marine biologist played by Charlotte Rampling. Very beautiful in this film as well, I will say,
and very eloquent and very, her
Shakespearean,
voice is iconic.
like Shakespearean, like dialogue.
Yeah,
the way, like she's amazing. I think she always has been as well, like quality actress. And she's in it, and yeah, they have this kind of will they, won't they, tumultuous. Like
the entire time I was going, I don't want them to.
I think they don't. Really, to a degree.
I don't think they do.
There's never. I wouldn't say anything that's outwardly overtly right.
The whole time I was thinking,
they don't kiss.
The whole time I was worried, are they going to kiss? Are they going to have sex? There's one scene where I'm like, is this going to be a sex scene?
Yeah,
and it's not. And I'm like, good.
Yeah, good.
Thank you, because he's not a good person.
But yeah, I think this film does have things I like. I think I prefer it than some of the sequels to Jaws. I think there's something about the mythology, the kind of classical kind of Ahab Moby Dick style storytelling to it. The the man's relationship to the sea and the elements, the science behind what we understand and how sensitive certain animals are and how their brains work. I think is quite interesting.
The intelligence of whales,
Yeah,
wrapped up in a Jaws Moby Dick story.
yeah, basically, in a sense, and yeah, it affects the community. You get a bit of the kind of superstitious stuff about fishermen in there as well,
Yes.
and the sea and what that means.
Will Sampson pops up.
Will Sampson, Will Sampson.
Well, he pops up and stays in the film for
Yeah,
some reason.
yeah,
Which we'll get into in a minute.
It's odd, but yeah, it is not a perfect film. I would not say this is a good or great film, but I think it's a fun and enjoyable one for the most part. Definitely not perfect in any stretch of the imagination, but I think it fits this festival really well. I've covered quite a bit of Jawsploitation in the past. We did Grizzly and Prophecy with Math. That was his first podcast, and there's another one I'm blanking on at the moment.
I did love your
We did Jaws
podcast.
the Revenge. We did
Secret Defenders, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we had that, and there's another one I'm absolutely blanking on at the moment, but I have done. There's a playlist I made of Jawsploitation, so go check that out on YouTube.
And this, I imagine, this will be added to that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, so this is an encapsulation of a lot of what Forbidden Worlds Film Festival of 2025 is trying to show. It's films that you probably haven't seen, or maybe don't know about, or maybe are harder to watch or something, but are Jaws kind of related in a way, or Jaws adjacent.
Yeah.
And there's a lot I can see with this film why so many people enjoy it, and I can see there's so many things that are good about this film and do actually work. And the film is a lot better in a lot of ways than I thought.
Yes.
It would be, especially with such a low rating on IMDb. But I think I'm also hearing what all the people at the festival, when we spoke to a few people, like fellow content creators or just people we know or from there, that I think I'm in the minority of the festival goers here, because my biggest issue is the end.
Yeah.
I think the end overtly is awful.
Yeah.
But everyone else seems to think the end's the best bit. Apart from I think we'd all agree there's a scene in the middle which we'll get into, which is the best. But I think for me, after an hour, the film completely falls off for me. And I think
I can see that.
We discussed it, and I think you, in principle, agree with a lot of what I say, but that doesn't detract from your enjoyment of the film, which is what I want to say with everything with Forbidden World and all film reviews really is, I am going to, in some ways, slate this film to a degree, but I'm in no way saying you shouldn't enjoy it. I'm not saying, I'm so happy I watched it as well on an IMAX screen, on water, seeing footage of actual genuine footage of orcas swimming and also a bit of sharks and stuff.
Gorgeous.
It was really
cinematography.
I was immersed the whole time. It's just, I think the last half hour shit. It's just like,
And I think it's one of those films where they don't know how to end it.
100%.
And as I said, I think the dialogue is really repetitive. They make the same points over and over and over and over and over again. I kind of feel like if Richard Harris's character was a bit more kind of ignorant and obstinate for a longer period before realizing what he's done, because he almost immediately regrets his actions, like from the get-go, immediately.
And they just kind of talks about it for like 40 minutes.
And then you learn his kind of backstory where he had a wife who there was a drunk driver that killed his unborn child and his wife, and and there's that link, and he sees the symmetry in both of their lives with this creature.
But again, I found that, but then he makes that, and then you go, oh, so he wants to make amends, and then he just completely abandons that.
Yeah. And then he says, "Oh, I won't go," and then I will go. There's a lot of dancing about, and I feel like they do the dancing about in the back and forth and the repetitive nature of the dialogue because they don't know how to stretch out the story to feature length.
This story is an hour long.
Yeah.
The film is 90 minutes. And I just think, for me, we'll say some of the positives really, which is, again, the film, the first hour, I was enjoying it. I wasn't like, this is amazing. I was like, this is cool. This is cool. And the peak for me, it's about, I think, 45 minutes, hour mark. There's a bit, and this can be minor spoilers, but again, it's a Jawsploitation movie. Sure. There's a film about a killer whale killing
people. It's silly.
Okay?
It is silly.
But there's a scene which I absolutely adore, and it almost makes the whole film worth watching, or watch up to that point and then just, but is a scene where the shark is trying to essentially get revenge on Richard Harris's character, because what happens is...
The whale?
The whale... So the whale, basically, Richard Harris's character, he he tries to capture a male whale, and he ends up capturing a female whale.
Yeah.
Pulls her up. Oh, she decides to try and like seemingly try and kill herself.
Yeah, so she gets injured. He misses the male.
Yeah.
but dings his fin.
Yeah.
So that's how we recognize.
Which is a cool visual thing.
Yeah.
That's a cool visual cue.
Yeah.
And then the female tries to kill herself by going on the propeller and bleeding out. And then it turns out that she was pregnant. And there's a scene which is in it, which is the weird big scene. So this is kind of a spoiler, I guess. But for me, it got built up too much, to be honest. And I was waiting.
I think because
I was waiting for a big shot.
Not only had I mentioned it, somebody else had mentioned it, and another person mentioned
and Ty mentioned it.
And Ty mentioned it.
Every single person was literally saying, "Oh, there's a big scene that happens in Orca." But Mike, we don't want to tell you because spoil it. And it happens in the first like 15 minutes of the film. And I was waiting for a big thing.
Yeah.
And it's gross. It might be slightly triggering for people to hear, but essentially, it's a female orca, and when she's pulled up and hung up out of the water after getting all sliced,
butchered,
she gives birth, but it's a stillbirth. So it's this fetus of an orca falls onto the deck of this boat, and it's quite. And they show it for a bit, and then it gets like washed off, and it becomes the whole through line of like part of the reason, and that's why this male orca is like vengeance, because orcas are monogamous, and this male orca has essentially had its wife or partner, mate, and its unborn child killed because of the greed of this captain. And
he's a revengeful son of a bitch.
Yes. And I think Richard Harris does like a great job in a lot of ways being the character. I believed his character.
Yeah.
But all of that is leading on to me saying basically this middle scene, which is the orca's taking revenge the whole time in a lot of various ways. But at one scene, which I love, this orca is like terrorizing the village instead of him, instead of this captain specifically, hitting this bit in the village and basically rams into this edge of this wall where some of the houses are so much that an oil lantern falls over, causes a fire, sets fire to a house and this all happens in the space of about a minute and a half, sets fire to this house. All of these houses across this stretch of dock, and then a trail of fire goes up by about half a mile to maybe a mile, or up a hill, all the way up to this giant gas station filled with fuel, and this massive explosion, and basically decimates everything. And every time an explosion happens, the orca jumps out of the water and does like a free willy style backflip every time. And when that happened, the whole crowd were applauding a ton. Every time the orca got a kill, the crowd were applauding. By the fourth time it happened, I was like a bit. I was like, I didn't say this, I didn't act like this. When everyone was applauding again, I was like, there's lots of deaths.
I felt that. I didn't see you do it, but I felt that because I could see the arms crossing. And
it was the last one.
Yeah,
it was at the point where the film had started to lose me, and then the last kill of the film, before they get to the ice caps happened, and then everyone was applauding again. I was like, but that was recycled footage. The character means nothing. It was obvious it was coming, and it was boring. So I was like, why? When it was the whole fire explosion thing, I was happy. I had a smile on my face. I was like, you know what? Everyone applauding it. This is the big scene. I'm up for it. It was after that I was like, okay. But that scene was amazing. I love it. It's so stupid.
I think there is a certain wavelength for this festival, and the fact that I previously have covered a lot of stuff that the organizers pick themselves, I think is great, because I'm like, absolutely, I'm in the right place, I'm with the right people. But like some of the moments where the audience react, you might not necessarily agree with or join in, but that tells me a lot, I think, about the people watching it as well, which is really nice, like, which you wouldn't get, and how you feel about a certain line might not be how other people feel, or how you feel.
I want people to enjoy it.
Yeah, of course.
I just sat there and I was like, but by that point, it was just the last one. All the other ones I was fine with. It was just that last bit when that random guy, spoiler alert, Ray or something. When he dies, I didn't even know who the fuck he was. And when he dies, it was literally such a boring death. And they used the same footage of the orca again. And he literally was like, gone, and the scene changed. And I was like, did he just die? And then the next scene was the narration bit that's really inconsistent, going, Ray died and we never spoke about it again. And that's it. And I was like, everyone applauded that? I was like, after the giant explosions that happened.
I think as well, like, I think there was a lot of people, I think the majority of people in there have never seen it. But I think there's a few hardcore Orca fans that were in there. And I think those are the ones that they were like,
they're two sat next to me.
And they were like, yes, which is great. And this is what we want. We want interaction.
That's what you expect at a film festival.
We want people to enjoy themselves. And 100%. And even Rob of the Bad Movie Bible said it's okay to laugh, even though it's deeply like serious topic, serious content. You know, the Orca somehow has an understanding of combustion.
Yeah.
Somehow, which again is silly and stupid, but I think the characters have to take it seriously, because if you didn't, it's just a parody film. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And again, that's sometimes where the humor comes in, and it is deadly, deadly serious, and it is kind of some heavy stuff going on, like you said, you know, animals being tortured and mistreated, and you know, absolute trauma and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I agree. I agree with a lot of the criticisms you have. I think the score is fantastic.
Yes.
Ennio Morricone,
Score's
who did
great.
The Thing and various other westerns and stuff, is an incredible, you know, composer.
I would say the cinematography of this is actually good.
Yeah.
This I was expecting
the
this to be
mixing of the practical effects and the animatronics and the ocean kind of ographer stuff, and you know, there's moments where you can tell like they kind of like shift like a day shot to night, a day to
a
night
little
shot.
bit. Yeah.
And you can tell, you're like, oh, that's water's very clear for the ocean, and you're like, yeah,
And then suddenly that water's really
that was probably
really
at SeaWorld or something.
Well, this is my. I didn't want to say this in the grounds of the festival, and this is no shade on anyone who enjoys this movie or Forbidden World for showing it, but Megan and I have watched a few documentaries, including things like Blackfish, and Megan is hugely into aquatic life, and we unfortunately have done quite a lot of research, and we know that when you have certain marine species, primarily dolphins and killer whales, when they have a floppy dorsal fin, they are depressed. They are in a really, really bad mental state when their dorsal fin is floppy. And unfortunately, a lot of the footage, basically the footage that wasn't animatronic, it wasn't like an orca in its natural habitat.
In captivity.
There were quite a few shots where I saw underwater, there were orcas with floppy dorsal fins. So I know, and this isn't necessarily the filmmaker's fault, I know they recorded...
This is something they probably didn't even know at the time.
Well, exactly. This only really came out, I think, the last 10, 15 years. I think Blackfish really showed a lot on that. And I only watched Blackfish a couple of years ago. And obviously this was shot in 1977.
Yes.
So again, I'm not trying to point the finger at anyone in particular. I just know when I watch certain films, like even when we watched Tremors, and I saw the bits with the horses, and then freaking out
concerned,
a bit. Like we went to medieval times in America. Megan and I, when we got married last year, as soon as we found out there were horses there, we immediately looked up and said, "Are these horses actually taken care of?" We read a Reddit posts, did a lot of research, and they are.
I've been to Thailand where we've gone to like see the elephants,
and there's a lot of places the elephants are not.
And I had one. Not almost ripped my arm off, but there was almost a moment where they had hold of my arm, and I was like, that elephant is not okay.
Elephants and orcas and dolphins are not as intelligent, if not more intelligent than we are, and it's one of those things. Again, 70s films is a thing, but I couldn't unsee that bit. That probably again dampened
your enjoyment.
A
absolutely.
little bit.
I get that. I covered Cannibal Holocaust, which you've listened to, and you
let's
watched
not
yourself,
say what happened in there in case Megan ever listens to this.
No, I won't. But
there's animal cruelty.
If you're gonna, if you know, that's the extreme end of that kind of spectrum.
I can't watch that.
But I did it. But I did it for everybody else, so they don't have to watch it. But so and I think that's the thing with these with the festival is Ty and the team will always contextualize what is going on, where they were at the time. Like I do on my podcast,
100%.
I'm gonna talk about something. I'm gonna talk about some very controversial stuff later this year, and we're gonna contextualize it, and we're gonna make sure people understand. They're not going, we really want to show, like, how many times have we heard the R word in this film festival?
Oh, I think I would say almost every film.
Yeah, almost.
Aliens is
one
the
use.
Do they say?
I don't
Aliens?
think they're saying Aliens, but
I think Aliens might be the only
they haven't
feature-length film where we haven't heard it said once.
And again, the organisers are not going, we've got to show that because it does that.
No,
they're going, this is a film of its time.
Yep.
We think it's important to show unedited.
Yep.
As it is originally,
which I agree with,
and I agree. I 100% agree with that. And I think to give us that in its raw, the way it was supposed to be shown, the way they would have seen it, and in a way that would never have been seen at that time on the screen is very important. And there are some weird stuff. Blood Tide ends with an incestual kiss.
Yeah. And the rest of the film is lots of attractive women wearing basically nothing.
Yeah, pretty much.
T-shirts off.
Pretty much.
So it's like,
pretty much. Yeah, and there's the icky stuff. The Roger Corman had some icky stuff that we talked about as well. There is that, and I think you must go in with an understanding that there's going to be some things that
100%.
have dated, and be it effects, be it the times and the ideas. Bill and Ted has slurs in it, and they're such lovely positive characters with a positive message, and everyone talks so wonderfully about those films. But yeah, there is some homophobia in there. There is some other stuff, and I'm so glad that they choose this, and again, expose people to things and to stuff that could potentially offend them, and they're a big supporter of, the queer community, LGBTQIA+,
100%. Yeah.
And there's, and all of this, and, people with, mental or physical disabilities are big fans, and
super inclusive festival.
Absolutely. And all of it is accessible to everybody and should be, and the festival is for everybody. And I'm glad that they're not, again, editing or censoring.
I wouldn't be happy with that. And again, I want to put that out just in case someone else sees Orca and thinks that, because I did, that unfortunately was a problem for me, and I do find with whenever animals are in films now, it is the one thing. Dogs are different because you can, for the vast majority of the time, like when we saw the dogs in the City of Lost Children, I was not worried about dogs being abused, because as long as they're not yelping out or doing stuff like that, having a dog run on set. It's just like similar with cats, like the cat in Alien,
Jonesy,
it's literally like, they're domesticated animals. I know horses technically are too, but like they are animals which are like, they're not having really long shooting days. It's literally like, I could get Willow, my dog, to do a huge amount of things on camera, and I have done, because she's been bred to
genetically designed to then follow instructions.
Exactly, and literally the way we raise her, I get her to do tricks, she gets treats. She loves doing that stuff. You've come around and met her. She loves doing that.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm not saying you can't have animals in films, but that was just a part of me that I wanted to mention. But again, no slight on Forbidden World. I'm not saying that you should watch the film.
Forbidden World is definitely not condoning,
but
the treatment of elements like that.
We have both had conversations off air a lot of the time about censorship, and we are both in the camp of like, we don't believe that art, for the most part, should be censored. There can be warnings before it.
Sure.
There can be restrictions on who can access it. We're not saying let's show Saw films to 2-year-olds.
No,
obviously,
exactly.
There should be restrictions and warnings, and there's certain extreme content which can be But generally speaking, I'm like, you can't really learn in what is right to do in art and stuff until you understand. If we went in and edited out the R word out of every single piece of art that existed, it would almost certainly have some degree of resurgence without people understanding. When I eventually have kids, if we watch a film, the R word comes up, I will almost certainly either pause the film or maybe wait to the end of the film depending, and I'll say to them, right, this word was said. It is not okay to say that word.
Exactly.
If I never saw any art or anything that ever doesn't say that word, I may never have that conversation with my child unless I specifically have the conversation. And these conversations about Orca, about these things, that what isn't right in film, is a really important part of reviewing and talking about these things. And that's what our pods are about. Is about honest discussions. Mine is primarily interview stuff. Yours is about films, but you tackle a lot of films that can be considered controversial.
Absolutely.
And you specifically recontextualize them, and you have taught me a lot about certain films from a lot of your podcasting, and this film festival is showing a lot of films I would never have seen. And I'm not going to go into a film festival and boycott films from the 70s that may have some problematic elements in there, because you
should expect it. You should
100%.
You should expect
exactly
unless you're watching but even a film yesterday could come out and be wildly offensive.
Or it's not offensive today, and in 20 years it becomes offensive.
Things change.
You can't control that.
Changes, language changes.
But run back round, because we're trying to keep this within a decent time. What was before I get into my final rant, which is going to be the end of the film, what I really liked about the film, what have you liked about this film?
I think stuff like
music,
music, mythology. I think, like you said, the cinematography and the beautiful shots of the whale song, I think, is really beautiful. It's almost like a love theme, but it's a love theme for whales.
I loved that.
It's gorgeous.
And they play that theme a few times.
Really, and it has a real kind of ecological message as well, which I think a lot of these aquatic films have had.
The main character is not seen as a good guy.
No, absolutely.
From the get-go, he's heavily criticised.
Yeah, he's a drinker. He's a drunk. He doesn't really care. He's just trying to make as much money, pay off this mortgage on his boat, and then go off and he wants to go back to Ireland and do whatever. But he is not a good guy. But I like the arc, and I like almost that he has to kind of like he's trying to redeem himself. He's trying not to do it, but then there's he's there's a lot of it's conflicted. I think that's the best way to describe it. And he's an interesting character, and I think he's played very well.
100%.
And I think the acting is another thing that I really like. I think especially Richard Harris is phenomenal as this character.
100%. But you believe him,
and I think he's what kind of ground. He's the anchor. Let's if we're going to use a pun for the film. I think if you don't have Richard Harris giving that performance, and he's funny, he's charming, yet you don't like him, and he's not a good guy, and he has such a journey. Yes, again, I don't think the writing is amazing, and it's a bit repetitive and sometimes redundant in some cases. But I think overall, I would much rather watch this than Jaws 3 or 4. A lot of people would probably disagree with me there. But
Charlotte Rampling also balances them out because her whole character, apart from at the end,
she's the eco warrior.
Another issue at the end of the film for me, which I'll get into. But like Charlotte Rampling's character, literally, her introduction to his character is literally her going, "You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't be doing this. And I'm not going to let you do this, but I can't physically stop you. But you're going to do this, and your consequences, you're going to hurt a whale you're not intending on in capturing a whale and stealing them from their family." And she tries to stop him with her words so many times before he does.
She's equally conflicted in her own way, like in the opposite way.
Yes,
like because she wants to study, understand, and protect them. But she has this. She's drawn to this man as well, even though it's the complete antithesis of the way she believes, and she goes along on the suicide mission.
Well, this is the problem. This is where
go into it.
So I think this film. Again, I think it's probably worth watching this film. If you're a big fan of Jaws, it's definitely worth watching. And again, I think that middle scene that I described is really fun, and the first hour is pretty cool. But I think for me, this film went from what was probably a maybe 6.5, maybe even a 7, down to a 5, if not lower, because I think the last half hour of this film is actively bad. Because what happens is essentially you've got all this conflict and you've got this interesting stuff going on back and forth and the vengeance and everything. And so what happens is Richard Harris decides to go, right, I'm going to leave this village. I'm going to get the Orca away from the village. I'm going to take control. He keeps saying he's basically going to sacrifice himself to the Orca to basically stop everyone's problems because all these villages have suffered so much. And he connects with the Orca because, again, his family backstory stuff. And I go, okay, he's going to go off into the middle of nowhere and he's going to basically let it eat him. And I'm like, okay, that would be a fine ending for me. But he makes that decision about 60 minutes in, and the film is 90 minutes in. And what he ends up doing is he gets in his boat, and it goes him, Charlotte Rampling's character,
and then
Will Sampson character,
and then you've got Peter Hootens or Hootkins, who was the 70s Doctor Strange, and you've got, I think it's Kevin or Kev, who is because you forgot who he was. So he's right at the start where Charlotte Rampling is diving and is almost attacked by the shark. He's the guy on the surface in the dinghy that they almost run into when he's trying to save them.
5 people decide to get on this boat, even though, again, and Charlotte's character the whole time is telling Richard Harris's character the whole time, you shouldn't do this. And literally the last conversation they have is her saying, you need to promise me you won't go. And then the next scene, she's on the boat with him with no explanation. And then the whole thing is they go on an expedition and they're gone for, it's like 2 weeks or something. Crazy. And all they do is they essentially go out away from the village, and then they end up just following the Orca to essentially the polar ice caps almost.
Like the
very
Arctic,
northern elements of like the edge of what is the North America's continent. And they go all the way there and they follow him for weeks while continuously saying, if we follow him, all that's going to happen is the Orca is going to ram an iceberg into the boat and destroy all of us. And all the characters keep all saying this and all agreeing this is what's going to happen, but still going along with it till the last 5 minutes where they all decide they don't want to anymore. And also saying we're running out of fuel, we can't even get home at this point. All this stuff.
Take a gun and say I'm in charge now, but it's like almost too late anyway because they don't have any fuel. But then they can radio in an SOS.
And then the helicopter comes immediately. And it's like on all this stuff. And the whole big problem with it is the whole thing is the Orca is allegedly trying to take them to the ice caps to have like a final showdown to beat him. But when the old man dies, like halfway through the film, the Orca rams the boat 2 or 3 times, and they say if he does it one more time, it's going to destroy the boat. The boat then gets heavily repaired in the middle of the film.
Correct.
Heavily repaired. And then the Orca rams the boat a couple more times. And then for some reason, I think they forgot their own plot, where they go, now to destroy the boat, the Orca has to for some reason ram an iceberg into it, even though they've already established that wasn't needed.
Stupid.
And all these characters follow him into nowhere, into this icy place, and all basically kind of just die for no reason.
Yeah.
Except Charlotte's character.
There's no need for any of them to be there. Even though I know Charlotte Rampling's character is kind of conflicted about the whole thing as well, and she's there to kind of soothe him, but there's no reason for Will Sampson to be there, in my opinion.
I don't even know what was in the film. I thought his point of being in the film was saying, look, he says about this superstition and stuff, about the First Nation people, and about how, like, you've essentially put a curse on the villagers and the family and all these people and stuff about killing this whale.
Yeah.
And they go, okay, that's fair. And then he just decides to go on the boat with him, but he doesn't protest for weeks. Again, it's like a 2-week journey.
Yeah.
And he kind of says, you maybe should do this. But at one point, he actually argues for them continuing to go to this icy place. And then when they get there, then he goes, no, we shouldn't be here. And then he gets the gun out. They just didn't know what to do with any of their characters.
They're all going back and forth. Like the main character, Richard Harris, I could understand him going back and forth a few times.
Yes.
Or Charlotte Rampling. But everyone
Those
else,
two on the boat, you could make sense of
and
that.
that's fine. I think if they're doing that and they're doing the dance, that's fine. But yeah, Will Sampson goes like, oh yeah, you should really kill it, and it's linked to this, and we believe this. And then you're going to piss off the other fishermen because it's a bad omen, and you're scaring the fish away and it's damaging the other boat. But then he's like, no, you shouldn't. And then it's just like, yeah, I don't at any point I don't know what a lot of the characters want or desire, and then I just don't know why they agree all to go on the suicide mission. I get that Peter Hootkins or Peter Hootens, I can never remember his name, but it's one of those. I understand because Bo Derrick's had a leg bitten off and they were in a relationship, so I'd understand why he would go. But I don't really understand why, especially Will Sampson goes. But I think the idea of him going to be on the ice and to fight him and to use a harpoon, like Ahab, like Moby Dick.
Yes.
I think there's kind of a literary classic mythological battle between man and nature going on there, which I like that idea, but I feel like they do flummox it. I think the him pushing the iceberg is silly to me and stupid. I think even the combustion thing is more entertaining than him just being this styrofoam iceberg coming towards them. Kind of kills the tension a bit. But I think that general finale idea is good. But like you said, he's already decided that an hour in, and then we just stretch out this ending with loads of weird conflicts that don't really need to happen or what's going on. But
I would have just, if I was making this film, I'd have kept the first hour almost the same, but what I would have done instead, I'd have added 10 minutes at the start with more character story about especially Richard Harris's character and the other people and the village in general. Just more boringish footage stuff kind of intertwined with his first interactions with the Orca, and then have him go to the iceberg place just with Charlotte and her and him almost the whole time arguing about why they're doing it.
Like I'd understand if they chased him to stop him.
Yes.
Doing it or for killing, because Charlotte Rampling says, why do you want to give this thing what it wants?
Yes.
And because she even doubles back on
even if she stowed on the board and he didn't know. If he said, I'm going to go kill it, and she stows on board, he's like, why are you here? And then
I'm going to stop you, or I won't let you both kill each other. You're both worthy of life and living. There's an opportunity there, but them just all being on the boat and not really doing anything to stop it.
And the death scenes are quite anticlimactic as well.
Yeah,
they're just almost pointless. And they're and gone.
Like the way Tremors does it is so much better than that. It's just like, this is just like a shot of the Orca jumping up and someone goes, ah!
And sometimes you don't even see them in the water.
No, it's that.
Yeah, but so I would say, just now to wrap up, Orca, interesting film. Glad I watched it. Some really cool moments in it and some great, but I just think that end bit really makes it suffer.
Yeah. I think I still like it. I enjoyed watching it again. I knew I was going to enjoy watching it again. Definitely not perfect, but I think it's fun in a cheesy way.
And it works in the festival.
And
That's
works
the big
part
thing.
of the festival. Tonally, it is an absolute correct choice within the variety of the films they've chosen.
100%.
And yeah, I and that's why I covered it on the podcast, because it is in that kind of wheelhouse that I do.
And I'll include a link to that in the description.
Yes, please.
I'm just conscious of the camera overheating because I overheat twice now. So we'll just say, thanks for Forbidden Worlds again,
Yes.
as always. Follow me at Genuine Chit-Chat on all social media places. Follow Spider Down the Secret Boss social media places. Follow Forbidden Worlds Film Festival anywhere that you are listening to this, and also check out all our other coverage because we're reviewing almost every film that's there, and also there's also fun stuff, interviews, and other great stuff behind the scenes.
All the traders, all the people doing the Q&As, all the people presenting, all the short film filmmakers.
Support indie film festivals and start with Forbidden Worlds Film Festival. Even
Anybody
if you
involved.
can't attend or anything like that, share, like, all that great jazz, and obviously like and review our podcast because it really helps us because we want to support Forbidden Worlds, and also we do this as a passion project.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you so much for listening to our review Orca. Make sure you check out all our other great content regarding Forbidden Worlds Film Festival. Links and etc. will be in the description as always. And yeah, we just appreciate you. So thank you so much for tuning in.